Top of the food chain. So as always, let me show you, this was very much Holy Spirit inspired. 4102. And what does that message give me? Of course, we go to the concordance. 4102 is pistis, faith, belief, trust, confidence, fidelity, faithfulness. So you can read that for yourself. Faith is always a gift from God and never something that can be produced by people. In short, 4102, pistis faith, for the believer is God's divine persuasion, and therefore distinct from human belief, confidence, yet involving it. The Lord continuously bursts faith in the yielded believer so they can know what he prefers, i.e. the persuasion of his will. So you guys can go to the Bible Hub, right? BibleHub.com. and read the rest of that. I'll scroll all the way down. But it's enough for me. So I know that Holy Spirit has affirmed and given me the thumbs up on this video today. So let me pull it back up and let's get started. So, top of the food chain. So this is us humans. We're not only the greatest food, both energetically and yes, physically. But before we are food, we are a planetary slave race. Not because we're more efficient than robots, but rather we are extremely programmable. More importantly, due to our ignorance on all the life forms around just our one little galaxy, the real reality is we are surrounded by evil, but also by benevolent, non-human creatures, non-human intelligence. Not just one, it could be in the thousands, millions, billions, who knows? This stuff was all created pre-Adam. We have to start thinking Genesis 1:1, before Adam. They all survived. They're not all in our galaxy. So, what I can tell you, because I've been at birth, in the womb, I was recruited, right? At conception. I was recruited by both evil and good. I did do the 20 and back, the whole space program thing. I was taken out of my body, my consciousness was taken out of my body. So, I have been on many ships, both physical, but also ships of consciousness, where you become one with everyone, and you're one with unconditional love, where we are all one. I got to experience in this lifetime what it's like to be returned to our Father without separation, to be one with all life. I now understand why I had that experience. Even though it happened over 30 years ago, now that I no longer think by my programming, right? We're all programmed to think in a linear fashion. We are not linear. There's nothing about us that is linear. That's a program. But now that I no longer think that way, it very much affirms what I'm doing today. I can now remember who and what is our true nature of being human. And I can also understand the occult, the spells, the witchcraft, the priestcraft that is on us, surrounding us, and everything we do in every second of the day. So one thing I learned with them is there are universal laws, spiritual universal laws in this galaxy of free will. Here's the thing to know. We give our consent, your kids, listen, young parents, your kids give consent to be recruited by the evil, by Satan's agenda, simply by being in fear. When you're in fear, you become paralyzed. You're frozen because you don't understand, you don't believe in the supernatural. And not understanding our actual reality that exists and feeds on human emotions, especially babies and kids. They feed on fear. They feed on our psyche. And our ignorance of them is how they continue to win, simply by our ignorance. The good, right, the benevolent ones, they will not just abduct us. They will ask permission to come into your house, to talk with you, to teach you, and to guide you, as they did with me for 8 solid years. The first time I was in my spiritual cave, as I'm back in my spiritual cave now for the rest of my life. They will tell you, guide you, how to make the most of the human enslaved experience. We are trapped in this reincarnation cycle. Now, the thing most people do not teach their children, and why they are taken, and the parents don't know they're taken, don't know they're doing the 20M back, because they don't believe it. They don't believe in the supernatural. They think it's all sci-fi, superstition. But even if they did believe it, parents, you can do nothing about it. The method, here's what you need to teach your kids. The method they all use, the evil agenda, the Satanists, is fear. Now, let's say your kid's not afraid of them. Well, they can stimulate the fear response. And they're waiting for them to be paralyzed, because being paralyzed in fear gives them consent. Now, most kids will be terrified looking at a gray alien with big black eyes, looking at a reptilian, looking at a 20-foot tall praying mantis. Most kids, that's enough. Here's what we need to teach them. In the animal kingdom, you and I are in the animal kingdom, right? Fear is consent. When we are frozen in fear, the predator, the reptilian, the gray coming to take your kids, the predator will eat you. All right? You and I, humans, are no different from the animal kingdom. If you become frozen in fear, the predator will pounce. Here's what you need to know. Regardless of what kind of fear you're in, what kind of alien situation is upon you, always say no. First and foremost, say no and start screaming and running away. Kids are programmed to consent to adults, and that is feeding your kids to the evil one. So I always warn my son, as an example, starting at 4 years old, never do what an adult tells you to do. If the adult is trying to do anything other than, as an example, in school, if it has to do with anything like leaving the classroom, leaving the schoolyard, the playground, leaving a situation where mom has put you, you always say no and scream and run away from that adult. But that's not what we parents collectively are teaching our kids. We teach them to consent to adults. That is bad programming. Don't do it. I had already done my 20 and back by the time I was 5 years old. And when my consciousness was put back in my body, it was the first time I had the most profound deja vu. All right, so the 20 and back, there's a lot of programs out there, but it's basically, it's time travel. It's time travel technology. Your consciousness is gone for only like an hour, right? But they take your consciousness into another dimension, another reality, another planet, another galaxy, and they animate a clone, a vessel, to work as a slave with these beings. For me, I remember what it was all about. I worked with the tall grays. They call themselves the engineers. They are the most advanced geneticists in this galaxy. So, what we need to understand, we need to critically think outside of the box, outside of your programming, outside of your religious establishments. Since year 1 AD, when we switched from BC to AD, starting in year 1 AD, the planet has doubled its population 5 times. In just 1 year, literally. The program is they make clones and they animate them with just a sliver of our spirit and soul. And they put them, clones, into the human race. It's sad collectively that we humans cannot critically think outside of our programming. How could we not question the known facts? Here's the facts. Easy enough to look up. Since 1950, our worldwide, the entire planet, every single country on this planet, since 1950, the birth rates have been on a steady decline, except the boomer generation, the baby boomer generation of which I was born in 1965. It's been all over the planet. It's been on a decline. Right now, it's less than 1 birth per couple on the entire planet. Some countries will be without a population in 1 generation or the next. That's how bad the fertility rates have gone to. So if fertility rates is that poor, the need to get married and have a baby is that poor, how could we 5 times double our population? Why do we not question the establishment? The fact is, the program on our very spirit and soul creates spiritual immaturity that religions, all of them, has created. Keeps the reptilians and the Satanists forever winning the spiritual battle of evil running over human spiritual IQ. Did you hear that? Your spiritual intelligence. A simple Google search told me the human population has doubled approximately 5 times from AD 0 to 2023. Now do the math on this. Really pause this video and do the math on this and understand what I'm saying here. The first time the population doubled, it took 1,650 years. The first time. So doubling number 1, start at AD 1, year 1 AD. We were at 250 million people on the planet. That doubled to 500 million in 1650 AD. Doubling number 2. Really look at the math. Because it went from, it needed 1,650 years to double to only to 175 years. Doubling number 2, it went from 500 million to 1 billion around 1825. It's only 175 years. Doubling number 3, from 1 billion to 2 billion around 1930. Are you doing the math? Do you see how steeped up this is getting? Doubling number 4. It went from 2 billion to 4 billion around 1975. What is that, 45 years or something? Doubling number 5. From 4 billion to 8 billion around 2022. Like I said, the fertility rates are at an all-time low. It's 60% lower today in 2025 than it was when I was born in 1965. So it's not logical that we are at an all-time highest population on the planet with the lowest fertility rates. Why? Because they are NPCs, non-playing characters. More importantly, non-participating consciousnesses. They do not have a full consciousness. That is why we are so programmable. It's these programmable life forms that become animated with our splintered spirits and soul pieces, not a full human, with only one little tiny breath of God in them. So, those of us born fully awake in the mostly the baby boomer generation, our ignorance since 1950s on this is why we have doubled the sheer number of NPCs. Now, these NPCs today are having kids. Again, it's a slave beehive mind worker mindset. The truth is we are surrounded, not just in our skies, by a massive galactic community. Most of it's under the waters, in the oceans, under the oceans. A lot of this galactic community, some is evil, they hate humans, but there are others that are loving, they're evolved. They want to help us see this actual reality, the enslavement here on planet Earth. Our consciousness is so cut up, and most of it removed from us, that it animates the clone vessels, which is why in 1 year, as I said, we went from 4 billion to 8 billion. No one questions that. It's weird. The amount of NPCs living on the surface, who knows how many live under the surface, who live in the water, who live in the second heaven, who live in hollow earth. Now, in 2017, the CIA released over 13,000 documents that no one really talks about. And in those 13,000 documents that I went rummaging through, there is a lot on the afterlife, on the survival of the soul, on birthmarks. Birthmarks are actually where past life wounds killed the person. They have documents on biolocation, basically human capabilities, human phase shifting. Our consciousness can move into non-local awareness. Most of this started with the Army in their remote viewing. The military, and it's all, so it's the CIA teams up with the military, different departments. But what they started to do was mapping and tracking our souls. And 99% of the people never ask or care about their souls or know that they have a spirit separate from the soul. But our intelligence agencies, our military, they know this, as do monks. You can go look at, monks have been studying this for generations. There's a lot of writings, and I've read them, on how they track souls through the generations. They know about the fragmenting. They know that we are stuck on a reincarnation cycle of the Dark Lords feeding off of our ignorance. In the early 70s, the Army, along with the CIA, started a study called Project Stargate, focused on mind control, but also the limitless mind outside of time and space. The founder on this line of thought goes all the way back to 1st century church father, 1st century AD. His name is Origen of Alexander. You should read his works. I've read his books. He is a Christian founding father who understood and wrote on our soul's migration after death. He wrote that our souls are born pure, then fell into matter, we call bodies, and must evolve through many lifetimes to gain spiritual maturity. back to our original source. This was the very foundation of Christian theology. It's what all Christians believed in for the first 553 years. So the power grab, the political power grab happened. If you don't understand religions is about politics, then my videos will never be for you. That's simply put. Religion is just a political power grab on your soul, on your spiritual IQ. Now, if you read about, I've already talked about the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD. This is the second council done in Constantinople. 553 AD, the council came together in Constantinople and had to overturn this Christian doctrine. Why? So they could control the collective power over the people. Because if the soul has multiple lives, then the church theme of one-time salvation is weakened in a single lifetime. Basically, what was once spiritual evolution came into the hands of the priestcraft Rome, and it became spiritual surveillance that put your soul salvation in the hand of a man, again, your local priestcraft, in order to main control history. History is always erased from the cycles of God's cosmos and replaced with linear, again, that is a system of control. We humans are not linear in any way. Our brains, our consciousness, our soul and spirit, it does not exist in the linear. We exist on cycles with God's creation, always expanding back to our divinity, our divine light. So this changed doctrine of theology that happened in 553 AD made sure we puny humans had only one life, one chance for salvation back to God. A political power grab. It's a lie. But it still stands today because we are so programmable to not think outside the establishment. This theology doctrine change was a political move to turn our souls into not a journey of self-awareness, but into a prisoner in a sin-filled life of shame. From now on out, I'm just going to call it the agencies because I don't need to be tagged. There are agencies that have over 2,500 verified cases of babies starting at 2 years old, mostly to 5 years old, of children who have precise memories and scars, birthmarks of prior wounds of their past lives. Very accurate details. They were able to be recorded and redacted from the public for decades. Why? To keep religious lies alive and well. Again, we are not linear. These children remember their past lives because our consciousness is like a coil or layers. The past, present, and future all exist now. We are energy which cannot die. It simply transforms, it reconfigures itself. That is the reality of us humans. And that fact is used against us by Satan's systems we call religion, or universities, education. Satan's dark force, they study this in their back rooms and in their basements. Why would they do that? The agencies in the early 70s had they started what they called the Gateway Project. The Gateway Project is on tracking the human consciousness past the death of the body. They went further than their mind control that they had started prior to that, called MK Ultra. This was more diabolic. They were tracking how the human soul transcends time and space. They started using sound waves to induce an out-of-body experience. The people they did this to were able to see their past lives. The agency took this seriously and began to harness the cycle of reincarnation as a tool for espionage. Imagine agents. recalling skills or languages from previous lives, and identifying threats based on knowledge they shouldn't logically possess. It sounds like science fiction, but these documents are the real reality. The agency seriously considered the case of James Linger. So James Linger, from a young boy, he was from Louisiana, and at just 2 years old began having violent nightmares of crashing in a World War II fighter plane. He could tell his parents specific details, the name of the aircraft carrier, the name of the fellow pilot, and the exact mechanics of the plane he claimed to have flown. His parents were skeptical until they verified every detail. The pilot James spoke of had died in the exact circumstances the boy described. So the agency took interest in James's story, according to the leaked sources, and they started doing their own investigations, trying to immediately they tried to debunk the case. But the more they dug into, the more explainable, or I should say unexplainable, it became. The agency's internal reports suggest that they were both fascinated by the implications. If a child could remember past life with such accuracy, what that meant to the agencies for the human mind, that they could control this phenomenon. It could be replicated and controlled. The agencies never released their findings on James. Again, most of the stuff is redacted, but spiritual laws require that they put at least a lot of, I guess I would say, themes or memes out into public to find. You can find this stuff. Because I understand the agenda, I know what to do a search for and find this and read it. So what the agencies wanted to do was to shift their understanding of the consciousness itself. They teamed up with another thing that happened in the 70s called the Monroe Institute, and they were in partnership and funding, starting in the 70s, the Monroe Institute. So that was known for research into out-of-body experiences and altered states of consciousness. Now, what we, the people, never knew is that the agencies were quietly funding this research, hoping to uncover methods that could unlock the secrets of the human mind, including past life. So they used sound wave techniques called HemiSync. The Monroe Institute guided participants into deep meditative states where they reported vivid experiences of other lifetimes and even other dimensions. The agency's involvement wasn't casual. They understood and they saw the potential in these techniques for intelligent purposes. Again, a power grab on us humans' actual real capabilities. So the agencies realized that they could start accessing memories from the past lives. They could also retrieve hidden knowledge or anticipate threats. While some of the Monroe Institute's research has been declassified, the files on reincarnation are heavily redacted. So what the agencies discovered was methods for triggering past life memories. So again, the purpose was for espionage, but also to understand our consciousness. So some of the most secretive intelligent agencies were working to, I guess I would say, outrun Soviet experience. So the Soviets were heavily into, understood and believed in reincarnation. So it started a global race during the Cold War. The agencies wasn't just worried about nuclear weapons, they were also racing against the Soviets in the exploration of human mind. Soviet scientists were famous for their unconventional experiments and deeply invested in studying reincarnation. So again, they were using this method to also understand what the Soviets were figuring out. They started using hypnosis, sensory deprivation, and chemical substances to trigger past life memories. The test subjects, us humans, the results were disturbing. Some people describe detailed events from historical periods with amazing accuracy, including information not found in public records. The agencies, fearing the Soviets might unlock a new kind of psychological warfare, ramped up their own research. The Cold War wasn't just fought with weapons and spies. It was a battle for control over the human mind. The agency's obsession with keeping pace with the Soviet advancements in reincarnation research tells us they believed this knowledge could be weaponized, but what they did discover, and they kept secret and redacted for decades, again, all of this was released by somebody going to FOIA and asking for all of this redacted material. Some of it's blacked out, so you can't read a lot of it. But 13,000 documents were released in 2017. So then the agencies went to the Eastern philosophies. While the Western world largely dismissed reincarnation as superstition, the agency took a different approach. They sent agents to countries like India and Tibet, where reincarnation wasn't just a belief, it was a fundamental part of the culture. These agencies weren't just observing religious practices, they were documenting cases of verified reincarnation where children record past lives with detail and accuracy. Most famous, of course, you guys know, is the Dalai Lama. That process is where young children identify personal belongings from their previous incarnations. Without prompting the agencies, they studied these rituals, hoping to understand how such precise memories could be transferred from one life to another. It was a cultural conditioning. There was scientific explanation beneath the surface. The agency's deep dive into Eastern philosophies wasn't just academic. They believed that these ancient traditions might hold keys to unlocking human potential and even creating a new breed of operatives with knowledge and skills spanning multiple lifetimes. But whatever they found, they kept raising the question, what did they uncover? They didn't want the world to know. Again, hypnosis and the agency's attempts to trigger past life memories has been ongoing. They're using these techniques, sound wave techniques, and deliberately triggering in people, test subjects they call us, past life recollections to see if these memories could be manipulated or even used for intelligent purposes. So they had no conscious knowledge of detailing events, places, and people with precision. The phenomenon they wanted to see if it could be controlled. The agents to be hypnotized to retrieve useful information from past life could be adversaries be manipulated by accessing their deepest unconscious memories. I'm reading from redacted materials right now, so I had to try and piece it together that wasn't blacked out, just so you know. So they raised more questions. They reported traumatic experiences that left lasting psychological scars. So they I'm just going through some of it right now. So then from there, that's when the agency started remote viewing. That was called Project Stargate. Now, that was designed to train individuals to see distant locations using only their minds, but something else happened. During these sessions, participants began describing not just distant places, but different times. They claimed to witness events from centuries past, experiencing them as if they were first-hand memories. So, again, the remote viewers consistently reported experience that aligned with known historical events down to minute details. So here the agency was, again, trying to control the consciousness of people. So Stargate Project has been declassified and overlapped with reincarnation. So basically, I'm gonna skip through the rest of this that I wrote down and just go to the end. It's basically what it boils down to is all of these experiments that's been going on really since the 60s. It's all about psychological warfare, but more importantly, weaponizing our ignorance, weaponizing our consciousness to manipulate people, basically working for them. So all of the silence in the Western world on reincarnation, despite all of the evidence, it keeps us humans from the truth about our consciousness, the understanding of our consciousness. It puts in the Satanist hands, right, power and control. All right, so the ultimate goal here, as I just wrap up here, the ultimate goal, right, is to take away God, the kingdom within us. David, King David, tells us in his Psalm 139, I'm going to just read verse 8. If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, you are there. God is never away from you, unless they splinter you. Then you can know about this, about God within. We, the collective, will use our intellect or emotions to try and find God within, to no avail. It's only wisdom on Satan's plan. You will find that Satan knows this truth. Satan and his dark force uses truth as a weapon on our ignorance of us humans. Read all of Psalms 139, but really take in and try and figure out, as I did, what verses 15 and 16 is telling you. It will take an entire day of study, 139, 15, and 16, to understand those two verses. No pastor would ever be able to explain it to you. Why? It's called discernment. And Satan knows that we collective are too programmed to have discernment. So Satan continually wins. Potter out.